God says when someone realizes you can thrive without their presence, their perspective shifts dramatically. What once felt secure to them now feels uncertain. What once felt controllable now feels unpredictable. The hidden thing they are still carrying is not only guilt or regret, it is the awareness that they misjudged your resilience. They thought the betrayal would break you longer than it did. They assumed your emotional loyalty would trap you in place. But instead of breaking permanently, you rebuilt silently. Instead of staying emotionally dependent, you grew internally. And growth is intimidating to someone who remains stagnant. When two people separate and one evolves faster, the gap becomes visible. That visible gap creates insecurity in the one who did not grow. You may have noticed subtle signs lately, small attempts at indirect communication, quiet curiosity about your life, shifts in tone if interaction occurs, or even mutual connections mentioning their name more often. These are not coincidences. When someone feels they are losing influence, they search for ways to regain relevance. But God says relevance cannot be forced. Respect cannot be demanded. Trust cannot be rebuilt through desperation alone. It requires consistency, accountability, and patience over time. Without those elements, any attempt to reconnect remains surface level. Understand this deeply: their desperation is rooted in fear of being replaced in your story. They realize you are entering a new phase. They sense that you are emotionally unavailable to chaos now. They feel that your standards have elevated. And elevated standards make previous behavior unacceptable. The person who once underestimated your boundaries now sees that those boundaries are firm. And firmness makes them uncomfortable because it removes the flexibility they once relied on. But this chapter is not about revenge or proving anyone wrong. It is about internal maturity. God says when you stop needing closure from the person who hurt you, you become your own closure. That is where you are right now. You are no longer asking, "Why did they do this?" Instead you are asking, "What did this teach me?" That change in question changes everything. It shifts you from victim mentality to growth mentality. And growth mentality creates peace. Another layer that you must recognize is that sometimes the person who betrayed you is hiding their own shame. Shame is heavy. It prevents honest conversations. It blocks vulnerability. It causes people to act defensive instead of reflective. They may want to speak, but they do not know how to admit their mistakes without losing pride. And pride is often stronger than sincerity. God says do not confuse silence with indifference. Sometimes silence is fear disguised as strength. But whether they speak or not, your healing continues. You have reached a place where your energy feels balanced again. Your focus is shifting toward your goals, your routine is becoming stronger, your confidence is stabilizing, and your emotional reactions are no longer extreme. That calmness is growth in its purest form. And when someone who once hurt you notices that you are no longer emotionally reactive, they feel the distance deeply. Because emotional reaction meant connection. Now your calm means independence. The truth coming to light is not about exposing secrets publicly. It is about exposing patterns internally. You now see where red flags were ignored. You now understand where you overextended yourself. You now recognize where you tolerated behavior that did not align with your standards. This awareness is not meant to make you bitter, it is meant to make you wiser. God says wisdom is built through experience, not theory. And this experience refined you. If they return, observe without rushing. Listen without surrendering boundaries. Feel without losing logic. Growth does not mean closing your heart completely. It means protecting it intelligently. If genuine change exists, it will show over time without pressure. If desperation is the only driver, it will fade quickly. And you will recognize the difference because your discernment is sharper now. There is also a future perspective you must hold on to. The person who betrayed you may play a role in your story again, or they may remain a lesson from the past. But either way, you are no longer the same person who first experienced that betrayal. You are stronger. You are clearer. You are less impulsive. You are more self-aware. That transformation ensures that even if situations repeat, your response will not. And response is where power lives. God says your peace is your greatest victory. Not their regret. Not their desperation. Not their hidden emotions. Your peace. The fact that you can sit quietly now and not feel overwhelmed when thinking about them means you have processed more than you realize. The fact that you can focus on your own progress without constantly checking their life means you have detached in a healthy way. The fact that you are reading this calmly instead of anxiously shows growth. Your life is expanding in subtle ways. Opportunities are forming. New connections are aligning. Your mindset is becoming more disciplined. And discipline builds stability. Stability builds confidence. Confidence builds better choices. The betrayal was painful, yes, but it redirected you. It pushed you toward higher standards. It forced you to value your emotional energy differently. Sometimes what feels like loss is actually protection in disguise. Do not rush backward out of nostalgia. Nostalgia highlights good memories and hides the patterns that caused pain. Growth means remembering both clearly. You are not heartless for moving forward. You are not cold for protecting your peace. You are not dramatic for demanding respect. God says self-respect is not arrogance. It is alignment with your worth. The person who betrayed you may still be hiding details, emotions, or realizations, but their internal process is no longer your responsibility. Your responsibility is your healing, your stability, your progress. When someone realizes too late what they lost, that realization belongs to them. When you realize what you deserve, that realization belongs to you. And your realization is more powerful because it shapes your future. This chapter is closing quietly, not with chaos but with clarity. And clarity feels peaceful, not dramatic. Stay steady. Stay grounded. Stay focused on who you are becoming. The desperation you sense from them is not a signal to return, it is confirmation that you have grown beyond where you once stood. And growth is irreversible. God says what you are witnessing now is not a coincidence, and it is not a random emotional cycle returning. It is the final stage of awareness settling into your spirit, and when awareness settles, it removes illusion completely. There was a time when you would have reacted instantly, when even a small sign from them would have shaken your balance, when one message could change your entire mood for the day. But look carefully at yourself now. You are not reacting the same way anymore, you are observing. That shift from reaction to observation is power. When you observe instead of react, you control your energy. And when you control your energy, you cannot be manipulated easily again. The person who betrayed you is not only desperate because they regret what happened, they are desperate because they sense they have lost influence over you. Influence is subtle but powerful. It is the ability to affect your emotions, to move your thoughts, to pull your attention. They once had that influence, and they knew it. But now your mind feels steadier, your emotions feel regulated, your priorities feel clearer. That steadiness removes their leverage. God says when someone can no longer trigger you, they feel powerless. And powerlessness often looks like desperation. There is still something they are hiding, and it is deeper than you think. It is not just a hidden truth about what they did. It is the truth about how much they depended on your stability. They leaned on your emotional maturity more than they admitted. They relied on your patience more than they acknowledged. They were comfortable knowing you would try to understand them even when they failed to understand you. Now that you are no longer carrying that emotional weight for them, they feel the absence of your support. That absence forces them to confront themselves in ways they avoided before. God says sometimes betrayal exposes more about the betrayer than the betrayed. It reveals insecurity, fear of inadequacy, fear of losing control, fear of being seen fully. And when someone acts from fear instead of honesty, they create damage they later struggle to repair. They may now be realizing that their actions were impulsive, ego-driven, or rooted in comparison. But realization alone does not undo consequence. Growth requires sustained humility, and humility takes time. You must understand something clearly: you are not obligated to carry their growth journey. If they are changing, that is good. If they are reflecting, that is necessary. But you are not responsible for guiding them through it. Your responsibility is your forward movement. God says your life is not paused waiting for someone else to mature. Your momentum continues regardless of who is watching from the background. Notice how your internal dialogue has changed. Before, your thoughts might have been filled with questions and self-doubt. Now, your thoughts are focused on self-improvement and clarity. You are thinking about your goals, your routine, your discipline, your emotional health. That shift in focus is evidence of transformation. And transformation changes how others perceive you. The person who once thought you would remain emotionally available no matter what now sees that you are selective with your energy. Selectivity creates value. Scarcity creates awareness. And awareness creates respect. The hidden truth is that they underestimated your strength. They miscalculated your breaking point. They believed your kindness meant you would tolerate everything. But kindness is not weakness. Patience is not blindness. And loyalty is not endless without reciprocity. God says when you finally withdrew your unconditional availability, the dynamic changed permanently. What felt guaranteed before now feels uncertain. And uncertainty creates anxiety in those who relied on your consistency without reciprocating it. At this stage, the most important thing for you is emotional discipline. Do not allow nostalgia to distort your memory. Do not romanticize the good moments without remembering the full picture. Growth means holding both truths at the same time. Yes, there were beautiful moments. Yes, there was connection. But there were also patterns that caused harm. And ignoring those patterns would mean ignoring your own evolution. God says maturity is remembering clearly without hatred and without illusion. There is also a deeper lesson here about boundaries. Before, you may have set boundaries verbally but not enforced them consistently. Now your boundaries are quieter but stronger. You do not need to announce them loudly. Your behavior communicates them. You respond less. You engage selectively. You protect your peace without explanation. That silent enforcement of standards is powerful. It signals that your growth is internal, not performative. If they attempt to return more directly, observe whether their actions demonstrate accountability. Do they acknowledge specifics or speak in vague generalities? Do they accept responsibility without shifting blame subtly? Do they show patience in rebuilding trust, or do they expect immediate forgiveness? God says accountability is detailed, not defensive. True remorse does not rush you. It respects your healing timeline. At the same time, do not allow your heart to harden completely. Strength and softness can coexist. You can be wise and still compassionate. But compassion does not mean self-sacrifice. Compassion does not mean lowering your standards. Compassion simply means you understand human imperfection without allowing it to control your life again. That balance is maturity. Another truth you must embrace is that this experience prepared you for higher alignment. You now recognize the importance of emotional security. You value communication more. You expect consistency. You no longer ignore intuition when something feels off. These are upgrades. And upgrades change the quality of relationships you will attract moving forward. God says what hurt you refined you. What confused you clarified you. What shook you strengthened you. The desperation they feel is not a command for you to move. It is information. Information that confirms you mattered more than they admitted. Information that confirms your absence is felt. Information that confirms you were not easily replaceable. But validation from their regret should not become your new source of confidence. Your confidence must come from your self-awareness, not from their realization. You are entering a season where your energy must be invested carefully. New opportunities require focus. New connections require clarity. New goals require discipline. Do not allow old chapters to consume attention that belongs to your future. God says growth demands direction. And direction requires intentional focus. In the end, whether they reveal everything or continue hiding certain truths, your path remains steady. You are no longer the person who needed answers to move forward. You are the person who creates peace without complete explanations. That is powerful. That is rare. That is maturity. Stay calm. Stay observant. Stay grounded. Let their desperation be their lesson, not your distraction. You have already crossed the emotional bridge. There is no need to walk backward. Your future is built on wisdom now, not innocence. And wisdom will guide you into relationships where betrayal does not define the connection, because clarity defines you. God says this is the final layer of understanding you need before you fully close this emotional chapter, and this layer is not about them at all, it is about you stepping into complete emotional independence. There was a version of you that once believed love meant endurance at any cost, that loyalty meant staying even when respect faded, that patience meant silence when your intuition was warning you. But that version of you has evolved. The experience of betrayal did not reduce you, it redefined you. It forced you to evaluate your standards, your expectations, and the way you invest your emotional energy. And now you stand in a place where your clarity is stronger than your attachment. The person who betrayed you may still be hiding truths, emotions, or realizations, but the most important realization has already happened inside you. You have accepted that you cannot control someone else's integrity. You cannot force someone to value what you offer. You cannot make someone emotionally mature if they are not ready. That acceptance is freedom. And freedom removes the need to monitor what they are hiding. God says once you detach from the need to uncover everything, you reclaim your focus entirely. You must also understand the spiritual significance of this transformation. When someone betrays you, it exposes the parts of your identity that were overly dependent on external validation. It shows where you ignored your intuition. It highlights where you overgave. And through that exposure, you gain awareness. Awareness is uncomfortable at first, but it is the doorway to growth. The pain you felt was not meaningless. It was refining you. It was sharpening your discernment. It was strengthening your emotional boundaries. And those boundaries will protect your future. There is a calmness in you now that did not exist before. It is not coldness, it is control. You respond instead of react. You think before speaking. You evaluate patterns instead of believing promises instantly. That level of emotional regulation is rare. And because it is rare, it changes the type of energy you attract. The person who betrayed you feels this shift. They sense that you are not easily influenced anymore. They sense that you have options, direction, and internal strength. And that realization unsettles them because it removes the safety net they once assumed existed. God says the most powerful thing you can do now is continue focusing on your forward path without drama. Do not seek confrontation for closure. Do not seek revenge for validation. Do not seek confession for peace. Peace that depends on someone else's admission is unstable. But peace that comes from your own growth is permanent. You have already done the internal work. You have reflected. You have processed. You have forgiven internally even if you have not reconciled externally. That inner forgiveness was for you, not for them. Another important truth is this: sometimes people hide things because they are ashamed of how they handled you. Shame does not always express itself as apology. Sometimes it expresses itself as distance. Sometimes it shows as avoidance. Sometimes it appears as subtle attempts to reconnect without addressing the core issue. But shame without accountability does not rebuild trust. God says trust is rebuilt through transparency and consistent effort over time. Anything less is temporary. You are not required to lower your standards because someone feels desperate. Desperation is emotion. Character is behavior. Focus on behavior. If they truly value what they lost, their actions will reflect growth. If they only value the comfort you provided, their actions will revolve around regaining access, not repairing damage. That distinction is important. Your discernment will recognize it quickly now because you have learned from experience. There is also something deeper happening here. Your energy is shifting toward independence and purpose. You are thinking about long-term stability, about emotional security, about mutual respect. You are less interested in intensity and more interested in consistency. That maturity aligns you with healthier connections. The betrayal pushed you to upgrade your expectations. And upgraded expectations filter out people who are not aligned. God says every painful lesson that increases your standards is protection for your future. At this stage, your focus should remain on strengthening your own life. Build your routines. Strengthen your discipline. Invest in your goals. Improve your physical and mental well-being. Surround yourself with people who respect your boundaries naturally. The more stable your life becomes, the less room there is for emotional chaos. And chaos no longer attracts you the way it once might have. Stability feels safer now. Stability feels stronger. If they reveal what they have been hiding eventually, receive the truth calmly. You do not need to react intensely. You do not need to dramatize. Truth revealed late is still truth, but your response will be grounded. That grounded response will show how much you have grown. You will not beg for explanations. You will not crumble under information. You will simply evaluate whether their new behavior aligns with your current standards. And that evaluation will be logical, not emotional. God says this chapter was never meant to define you permanently. It was meant to develop you. You were never meant to remain stuck in betrayal. You were meant to outgrow it. And you have. The desperation you sense is confirmation that you have moved emotionally. The hidden truths they carry are reminders of their unfinished work, not yours. Your work is nearly complete. The final step is acceptance without resentment. You accept what happened. You accept that people make decisions based on their maturity level. You accept that not everyone can meet you where you stand. And you accept that your peace is more valuable than any unresolved conversation. That acceptance creates inner freedom. Stay steady. Stay disciplined. Stay focused on who you are becoming. You are no longer defined by someone else's betrayal. You are defined by your response, your growth, your boundaries, and your clarity. And clarity is powerful. Let their desperation remain their lesson. Let your growth remain your strength. You have moved beyond the emotional storm. Now you stand in calm awareness, and that calm is your greatest victory. If this message helped you see the situation with more clarity and strength, comment, "I choose peace over chaos." Let that be your declaration. Share this with someone who is learning to protect their energy and grow beyond betrayal, and subscribe if you're ready to keep evolving with wisdom, emotional control, and self-respect.